2022 was literally everything just falling off, all the wheels just coming right off because I thought I was a genius because I was flipping houses and making 30 grand and I would be over budget, over timeline. 13 months one time, over time. Since the time we closed to the time we sold, 13 months, and we still profited $30,000. That was the market saving me.
This is the Better Life Podcast with Brandon Turner and
Cam Cathcart.
Cam. You know, last night was a good night.
Dude, it was so good.
In that we went and sauna'd together at my house, and then we cold plunged.
And then sauna'd again.
Yeah, and I have a video of you in the cold plunge, which people might not be able to see, but we can at least hear. Oops, what am I pressing all these buttons for? Okay, cancel right here. Let's listen to Cam in the cold plunge.
Okay, sound. It's Cathcart.
Feel like I'm having a heart attack.
Oh, look at that mullet, though.
Look at the mullet in the mullet in the white cold plunge tub.
We can't post that.
Anyway, good job on cold plunging with me. That's fun. All right, man. Today's episode, Jesse Nguyen, good buddy of ours. We've known him for years. Seen him develop from a young, eager real estate investor into a powerhouse on the East Coast.
Dude, he's going to do 100 deals this year.
I know.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's insane. His strategies, his mindset, his mind, his intelligence, all that. You're going to love all that. And my favorite part of the show, I mean, there's a lot of good stuff, but my favorite part is when we like nerded out over that, like the strategy that he's doing. That is something that nobody I know is doing, and he's just cleaning up with it.
Yeah.
And we just nerded out over that for like 20 minutes. It was great.
It's a really great strategy.
Really great.
And that was selfish of me because I just wanted to learn from my own
me too. I was like, how do I want to know that. I don't know. Yeah. And that's the best podcast where like the host like really, really cares. So I'm excited for y'all to listen to that. And I think that's all we got. Anything else?
No, it's going to be a great podcast.
It's going to be a great podcast. Listen up. Here's Jesse Nguyen. This episode is brought to you by our friends at TurboTenant and Ballpoint Marketing. These two companies are big supporters of the show, and they know how to work with real estate investors and help real estate investors grow their businesses. So be sure to stay tuned to hear how you can get, discounts and free stuff from them both. And as you probably know, all the profits from this show go to charities of the guest choosing. So when you listen to the sponsors on the show and you work with these hand-chosen by me sponsors, you're actually doing good for the world. Now let's get to the show. Jesse Nguyen, dude, it's so good to have you here today.
Thanks for having me, Brandon.
Yeah. Okay. So, Jesse, I know you. I've known you for a number of years now. I know you were the youngest of the now no longer existing, but might be coming back later this year, Maui Masterclass that we've hung out several times together for these Maui Masterclass adventures. More on that in the future if you're listening to this podcast and you want to come hang out in Maui with me and Cam. Because Cam, you're also a member of such class.
I am.
So I know you're the youngest guy. 25 right now? And that was years ago. You were in that a few years ago. So like you were 23 when we were doing that?
21 or 22.
Jeez. Crushing it. You're a Delaware investor. I know that. And you flip houses and you do wholesales and you do innovations, which I want to drill you on later. And I heard you're a really good cook. Is that true?
I try to be humble.
All right. I heard you're a great cook, so we're going to be putting you on the grill tomorrow as we go hang out on the side of the mountain tomorrow for dinner. Good. So you're going to be cooking for us tomorrow. Thank you. But take us back before all of that. Who was Jesse Nguyen?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Brandon, for having me on this podcast. I'm super humbled to be here. And it's really awesome that the three of us could be here together.
The best looking guys in the Maui Masterclass.
That's what this
is.
That
the
is.
Three best looking guys.
I met Cam there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You guys were in the same class.
Goes full
all
circle.
Coming together, guys. This is great.
Full circle moment.
All right, so take us back. Who were you before real estate?
Yeah, no. So back when, actually, let me tell the story about when we were introducing ourselves at the Maui Masterclass.
Okay.
Like in that room, I was 21, 22 years old and super nervous, kind of basically forgetting my name, what I did. And I was like, actually, I'm feeling a lot of imposter syndrome right now. So I actually came with a piece of paper of, okay, this is actually who I am. This is what I've done.
There you go.
This is what I could add value on. So I'm gonna just start it right here.
Read off the notes, buddy. I don't mind.
I'm just a normal dude from Delaware. I started cutting grass when I was 13 years old, worked customer service jobs from 16 to 20 years old, ran cross country in high school.
Did you win cross country in high school?
I did not win.
I feel like you'd be a pretty good cross country guy.
I do CrossFit nowadays. And
do you really?
I just recently won my first scaled competition.
Dude,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
How do you know somebody's in CrossFit?
They'll tell you.
They'll tell you.
I went from cross country to CrossFit.
Yeah, CrossFit's way better than cross country.
Yeah, but I was doing cross country while working the customer service job. So I was just a major grinder work until 9 p.m. at night. I just always had that work ethic in me. My dad's name is Hai. He's Vietnamese immigrant, like Hai. So me and my coworkers, my team call him Workaholic Hai. Yeah. And then my mom's name is Jenny. So her friends at work call her Jenny from the block, or we call her Jumpin' Food Jenny, because
There you
she
go.
cooks like a dream.
That's how you can cook. It's from
Yeah,
her.
I got it. I got everything from my genetics,
Yeah.
honestly. And I kind of grew up kind of resenting how much my parents worked, but then just what you can learn from watching what your parents do and how they act. I just have so much to be grateful for. I did a corporate America job intern when I was in college from summer going into sophomore year, and then COVID happened, missed junior year, graduated one semester into my senior year. So I only did 3.5 years. COVID basically vaporized half of my college career, and I was forced to basically grow up a lot faster. I was always a hustler. Like I said, I ran a grass cutting business, all in the town of Newark, Delaware, where is
Newark?
Newark, Delaware. So like there's Newark, New Jersey.
Okay, yeah.
And then it's spelled exactly the same way in Delaware. It's Newark, as if
Newark.
like Noah's Ark. It's
That's funny.
Newark, Delaware. Yeah, so I stayed in the same town instead of going out of state like everybody else, because that summer I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I decided it doesn't make mathematical sense to go out to, I got into Tufts University, which is a really expensive, like bougie school, 60, 70K a year. And it was gonna put me in the hole by like 250 grand.
Mhm.
And we did not have that type of money being an immigrant family. So I stayed in my town. I actually cut grass while I was at the University of Delaware. I did the internship thing. I actually slept a whole lot more than I worked. And luckily, my manager from that company, she actually retired, so it doesn't matter anymore. But
I'm going to tell her, man. She's going to come
I
back.
had this one other manager whom we built a really great relationship, and she actually pulled me in to be basically her personal assistant. I was getting paid $45 an hour as a personal assistant. That was crazy.
Yeah.
And that was during the COVID times as well. So I was making $45 an hour, 40 hours a week, while taking my last semester of college, which was 15 credits. And I was just hustling. COVID was just insane, and I'm kind of getting off track. But long and short of it, during the pandemic, I got into flipping houses. I drove for dollars, found this one deal, bought it for $60K, put $60,000 into it, sold it for $260K.
Dude,
Wow.
okay, I want to dig into that deal a little bit if you don't mind. Just like that. That was your very first deal.
Yeah,
Like, who does that?
I kind of escalated kind of quickly from running a grass cutting business to going to college to doing a $100K deal with a partner. It was one of my friends from church who his dad did 90 flips between 2015 and 2019. His dad basically mentored us through that entire process. He was just like, I could find you guys the money. I could find you guys the contractors. Just find the deal. So we relentlessly spent an hour and a half every single week for 6 weeks straight that summer going into sophomore year while I was working as well.
Can you go in real quick and like for those who have never heard the term like driving for dollars or driving for deals, like what does that even mean? Like what were you doing to find such a great deal?
We loaded up our cars with gas, and then we heard of the concept driving for dollars just because I was just scouring the internet. And during that time, this one app called Deal Machine came out.
Yeah.
And this was actually like the bootleg version of Deal Machine. Nowadays, Deal Machine has AI. It's like, it's juiced up. We didn't have that. It was just point and shoot. And then it would just send mail automatically. And it's like not even good quality mail, like what we're paying for nowadays. So we did that, just bought we sent mail to the houses that had tall grass, wood windows, a roof that looked like it was 30 plus years old. We drove around the neighborhoods that I knew flippers were flipping houses in. And we just had a ton of those in Newark, Delaware.
So you guys were driving for dollars to build your mailing list? Or were you guys skip tracing those and calling them? Or what?
We were not calling them.
You weren't calling.
We were not doing everything that I am doing today. We were basically just shooting from the hip. That was literally what we were doing, just sending random pieces. And it was a lot less competitive than it is today. That was the summer of 2018, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. So nowadays, everybody's wholesaling real estate or trying to do the marketing game, and everybody's trying to get a deal. And this was before the whole real estate market like doubled and tripled in 2020 to 2022. So we got the house for $60K. That house nowadays is selling in that same condition, $220,000 to $240,000, and fixed up houses are selling for $375,000 to $400,000.
Dang, yeah.
And we sold it for $260,000.
Do you wish you would have kept it, or are you happy you sold it?
I needed to sell it. I needed to sell it.
Yeah, that's wild, man. Okay, so a couple more questions on that deal.
Yeah.
How did you get the financing for that first one? I mean, you're 21 years old or whatever. Like, how do you get the money?
That was a really stressful time during my life. I was working the corporate America job, doing pretty much nothing. I was sitting on the computer while at the same time looking at my phone, and I'm like, dang it, I got to raise the financing in the next 3 weeks, then 2 weeks. Then it's that week of, it's like, we got to close by the Friday. It's Monday. So I'm calling everybody in my cell. And by the time I got to the 21st and 22nd person, like I called my dad's second and third cousins. And they actually funded my dad back in like the early 2000s when he bought auction properties. So they were on board. They were like, okay, you got the deal for this cheap? Like, let's do it. So somehow I sold them on the deal. And then they only funded the purchase, which was 60 grand. Now I didn't figure out how to get another 60 grand. I had about 4 or 5 friends in college that loaned me 5 to 7 grand a piece because they were like suburban, working at a country club, just normal people, stacked money in their bank accounts. Parents paid for college, which, I don't shame them for. But they loaned the money to me, 10% flat interest, promissory notes, no mortgages. They just blind trusted me. But they actually went to the house. It was only like 10 minutes away from the campus. So I brought these college students into the house after we closed on it. And I raised another 30 grand in financing. And I got the project all the way through. And we still owed the contractor another 30 grand. So when the project was basically 95% finished, I got another loan for the 30 grand. And that guy just needed to hold the note for, 2, 3, 4 months by the time we sold it. And everybody was cashed out. And we wiped your hands clean and walked away from it with 100 grand plus profit.
What was going through your mind after that sold? I mean, like, were you super excited, like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life? Or was like, wow, we barely got out? Or like, what was going through your, like, what was your mental state in that when you got out of the first deal?
I was pursuing financial freedom. I was listening to the Bigger Pockets podcast while cutting grass all this time. And I was told that, hey, you flip houses or you make money so that you can go buy rental property, get these seller finance deals or get the subject to deals or invest in direct mail marketing or more marketing channels so you can buy houses at 50% discount. I basically, with my 50 grand split or my 50 grand share, I invest into marketing channels, which was just, I had some cold callers. I did not have any systems. If anything, I was calling the sellers, following them up from my personal cell phone and going on appointments. And I met some people, some like 1980s investors in Delaware that sold me their deals, their houses that were terribly distressed, but they were great deals at the time. And they offered the houses at 10, 15% down. And with my 50 grand, I blew probably 5, 10 grand on marketing and then blew the rest of the 40 grand on getting the other houses. And that probably bought me 4 or 5 houses.
That's cool.
And then the friends that I gave them back their money with interest for the flip, I had this fourplex that came about through the direct mail marketing, it was cold call marketing during the time. And I got the only quadplex in the entire neighborhood in this town called Claymont, Delaware, which is like 15 minutes away from the Philly airport. It's a phenomenal location. It's where I live now. I love it. And my friends loaned me the 30 grand and I got the FHA loan. I let the money season in my bank account long enough that I got 2 months showing this 30 grand. I put it down on the house and we had the contract since October and we almost lost it several times. And then we closed it December 29th. I was in California visiting my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife. And I hear, hey, we got the clear to close. I didn't know anything about remote closings back then. So I flew all the way back to Philly awesome. to close on this deal in Delaware, and then flew all the way back to spend the New Year's with my girlfriend and her family. But I closed on the quadplex. Yeah, for $365K. It's probably worth $500 to $550 now. I remodeled the unit that I live in, 3-bed, 1.5 bath. Phenomenal property, great location. I love it. I got tenants paying my bills, and I also got an Airbnb next door. So it's like I just have several revenue streams plus the rental property that I bought on seller finance notes and some subject to. I had one subject to deal where the guy actually paid me like 10 grand to get it.
That's amazing. That's a win right there.
Why would he do that?
I was just playing the how to split the difference game way too well, you know? I was just like, no, I don't think this deal is for me. And he's like, how can we make this work? And I was like,
Wow.
I mean, if you give me like 15, maybe. And then a couple of days before, he's like, man, that's a little too much. I was like, I will 10. He's like, okay, yeah, let's do it.
Wow.
He gave me 10 grand to take over his house.
That's amazing. I've never heard of that.
And that came from a bandit sign, just a sign that, you know, we buy houses sign. Yeah, there was one summer I paid a girl from my church 50 cents a sign to handwrite all of them.
Yeah.
Like, because I saw it on Instagram. I saw one of my friends do it because I wanted to differentiate myself from buying, you know, the yellow We Buy House signs. So we actually made our own. And I actually got a call on that. I still have that property today.
Yeah.
So I became financially free at 22 years old.
That's
Dude,
amazing.
that's amazing. Hey, do you have any advice for young people? I hear all the time young people going, oh, like nobody will take me seriously in real estate, or, you know, I can't get anybody to lend me money. It's just hard being young. What's your advice for young people trying to get into real estate? And by the way, a lot of times those people are older than you and they're complaining about it. So what's your advice to the people about being young?
I think you need to approach the game and the sport with a lot of humility and curiosity, asking genuinely good, well thought out questions, finding the people whom you think will pour out into somebody like yourself. Because sometimes you're networking and people tell you to network and you're just aimlessly networking and you're not actually being intentional of finding the right people that's going to pour into you.
Yeah.
And that you need to also think of it as like an exchange. Like you asking this question also allows them to live their purpose in teaching you or mentoring you or shepherding you.
Dude, that's so good. Because there are so many old people out there. I've said this for years, but so many old people out there, older, you know, people who are like, oh, you know, my kids don't care about real estate. They don't care about anything I care about. But this 25-year-old kid, I can see myself in him and I'm going to help him succeed. Like that's not like 4 guys in America doing that. There's probably like 4 million old people in America who would absolutely love to find a real hustler that can like get out there and get stuff done. Yeah, it just impresses them.
I think that was when we first started, which was around the same time. It was beginning of 2020. The thing that set me apart, and I'm older than you, but I was 28, I guess, when I started. I'm 32 now. So was the hustle, but also like the humbleness to go and ask questions. But I think that was only a part of it. The next step was, hey, I sat down and had coffee with you and you told me to read this book and do X, Y, and Z. And then the next week I went and did it. So the next time that we got coffee, I was like, I did this. Because people, there were so many mentors. I think a lot of people say it's hard to find mentors. It's hard to find mentors. I don't really think that it is, because if somebody comes to me and says, hey, Cameron, can you be my mentor? I'm going to maybe say pay me, but no.
It's a paywall.
No, especially
it's like dealflowrealestate.com.
No, cut that. I'm kidding. Don't have to cut. But especially if it's somebody that I know, that there's a common connection. It was like Brandon reaches out and is like, hey, I've got this young kid who wants to buy, you know, single family houses. Would you talk with him? I'd say 100%. And then if I sat down and talked with him and I was like, hey, here's a couple books that I read, and here's like some, like, go to a couple meetups, meet people, have some coffees. Let's talk in a couple weeks. And he comes back in 2 weeks.
Which he
or
won't.
she.
95% of the time they
That's
won't.
the problem. Is most of them won't. But if he or she does, like, I'm all in on that person. Because I think everybody has this innate like savior complex a little bit. And it feels good. It feels good to help other people. And it feels good to be a part of their story. And so I love what you said, because I think that's so important for people that are listening. It's like, you can find a mentor. You just have to, one, put yourself out there, and then also do what they tell you to do.
Yeah. Like, I want to shout out my buddies like Trevor Howard and Dane McKinney, because they literally built their entire business model over getting coffee with investors, commercial people, developers out in Salem, Oregon. And Trevor at like 27 had 100+ units. His mentor got 1,000+ units. That guy's mentor got 2,000 plus units. And it's just like, these are just normal dudes that enjoy hanging out with one another. And even Trevor got a mentee who is now his partner, Dane, who is even younger than both of us. And he's just a go-getter, and he's just like asking so many great questions, trying to learn the entire game, asking really, really great questions that we wouldn't even think about, but they address different risk to our business. And it's like, sometimes you just need a fresh lens like that. And if you can add that type of value to somebody else's life, they want you around.
Yeah. I love that.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, just with your buddies, and I should write a book. You're good at writing books and coming up with names, but like something about how coffee meetings have made me over $1 million, well into the millions.
The $1 million coffee meeting.
The $1 million coffee meeting. But I think that's
like $1 million weekend from Noah Kagan.
Seriously, like
$1 million coffee
$1 million
date.
coffee date. That's great. That's it. That's going to be it. But I think that there is something there with your friends, with anybody that's getting started, because that's rare, I think, in today's world, where it's like, hey, can I buy you coffee? Especially in like a small market, or St. Louis isn't a small market, but a Delaware market, where it's like, hey, can I take you out for coffee? And nobody else is doing that. And then the strategy of like sitting there and building a relationship rather than just trying to do transactions. That's I love that. So.
What about somebody who says, I'm just curious how you guys react to this. Hey, I would love to take you out for coffee, Mr. Investor that I ran into at a meetup. Hey, sorry, kid, I just do a lot of coffee. I used to do a lot of coffee meetings. I don't do those anymore. I just don't have time. How do you respond? Did you just leave them alone?
Or we got to meet at 6 a.m., 7 a.m. before everything starts.
You just push your way in? But they're like, I don't like meeting with people anymore.
Oh, you mean if they were trying to meet with me?
Yes.
If they were trying to meet with me,
well,
we got to, or I was trying to meet with them.
If you want to meet with them, how would you push your way into a mentor's life, or would you? Like if they were kind of resisting, like, hey, I'm tired of doing these meetups.
It depends on the personality, the vibe, honestly, of the person I am talking to. Because I don't like to meet with pretentious people.
Yeah.
I don't like to meet with people who think they're bigger than life.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I think people also pick the wrong mentors, and they don't acknowledge it. They just think that this person is such a big baller, but would you trade your life for their life?
Dude, that's so good. Yeah, would you trade your life for their life? And a lot of times the answer, like you look up people online, you're like, oh, they're really cool, or I wish I could do what they do. And then you look at their life and you're like, they're on their 4th marriage and they're 40 pounds overweight. And they're like, do I really want that life?
Yeah. Dude, I want the guy who's like, $3 to $5 million net worth, who works out every single day, spends time with his kids after work, maybe even takes his kids out during work some days.
Yeah.
I just want, a simple guy like that. I would love to build more relationships with people like that. And there's tons and tons of people like that in every local market. I come from Delaware, which is a small market where it feels like everybody knows everyone, 1 or 2 degrees of separation, but it feels like every single town in America has that feeling as well within a certain mile radius. So if you want to do real estate and learn from local mentors or like local people actually doing the business, they're everywhere, you know?
Yeah, and you probably won't find them on Instagram.
No.
People ask me all the time if I'll be their mentor. I'm like, you don't need me.
Yeah.
Like if you want to learn how to be a social media superstar, fine, maybe I can mentor you. I'm going to charge you a bunch of money. But like, I know I'm not a good mentor. Somebody like, hey, I want to flip houses in Delaware. I'm like, why would you talk to me? I know nothing about houses in Delaware or really that much about flipping. Like I haven't flipped in years.
No.
Find somebody who's actually doing it, who isn't just making a big Instagram account about it or YouTube. Like, yeah, there's a big difference between people who's teaching it and people who are doing it.
Yeah.
I think there's also a strategy with networking, which is one of my superpowers is networking, but being at meetups where that person's going to be at, or going to, one of the things that I did when I first started was strategically go to like showings, because investors would post a showing on Facebook and I would know that, hey, there's another investor that I want to connect with that's going to be there. And so I would show up, not even about the house, just to make a connection. Because I've always felt like if you can get me into a room with somebody, I can win them over with charm or with a joke or something like that. And so
$20.
Like, yeah, $20. So I always felt like that there's so many strategic ways to make connections and build rapport with somebody. We were interviewing somebody on the podcast actually earlier today, and he was talking about one of the, he's a movie director, and he was talking about with like celebrities, one of the things that if you ever encounter a celebrity, I don't know why we're talking about this, but he's like, give them a compliment about how they've changed your life. Because that is going to mean something to them versus just going up and saying, hey, can I get a coffee meeting? Not with a celebrity, but can I get a picture?
selfie? Yeah.
But same thing with like an investor where it's like, hey, I watched this video that you did on YouTube, or I saw your post on Facebook about X, Y, and Z. And dude, that was like absolutely life-changing. And this is how I'm using in my business. Do you mind if I could take you out for coffee? Something like that. Because immediately they're like, this person actually cares and they know me and I'm adding value to their life. And again, investors have a savior complex. And so, if you can like feed into their ego a little bit, they're going to give you that coffee meeting.
Yeah. Oh, one more thing I wanted to add to that, where it's like, look for the investor inside your friend network that is posting about their projects, and then ask them about their projects, or just ask them about how things are going in their business. Ask them how they're doing, maybe even genuinely.
Yeah.
And you would not believe how many people do not care about them or their lives or their business.
Yeah.
And if you are one of those guys who
does
like,
care.
hey, who does care, and it's like, hey, I just want to know what's going on in your world, they will tell you.
Yeah.
People love talking about themselves, especially the guys who are on Facebook or Instagram talking about their projects. Like, that's the whole reason why they're posting about their projects, that somebody would ask them about it or bring them more deals, or,
it's actually a good point. If you were to take a mentor out to coffee and the whole time you just ask them questions about yourself, like, so I'm going through this situation and I'm trying to buy this house here and this is the numbers, that's going to be a very annoying and probably forgettable first conversation with you. But if you're the whole time you're just asking them questions about themselves, they're going to walk away from that meeting going, wow, I sure like that guy.
Yeah.
Right? Like they just talked about themselves the whole time, but they're going to feel like, oh, like that was a fun conversation. And they don't even realize why. It's because they're talking about themselves. Because like you said, everybody likes to talk about themselves. It's brilliant.
My business coach, his coaching, it's called Curiosity Coaching, but it's kind of built around that. Like, the world would be just a much better place if everybody was curious and you wanted to get to know the other person and what makes them tick and why they do the things that they do, instead of talking about yourself the entire time. Just asking good questions can change everything.
Love it. All right. So Jesse, we kind of got the beginning of your story, and I want to fast forward now to the end of it, like where you are today. And then we'll go back and fill in the spots in between. So what's your business look like today? What are you buying? How much are you buying? Like, what kind of deals are you doing? Give us just like a broad overview, what your business is like today.
Yeah. So I'm a business operator of a real estate investment company that does about 2/3 assignment contracts and then 1/3 flipping houses. So nowadays, we have a very simple, lean business of about 5 people internally, and then two project managers on top of that. So the way that it structures, we have a COO/marketing director, and then we have.
Can I ask you, before you get into the structure, for people that what is an assignment contract?
Okay, so how it is known nationally is wholesale real estate. That's probably the buzzword on the internet. But as more regulations come about, they want to shut down wholesaling real estate. And we're leaning more towards, hey, we're a professional company that assigns the rights of these contracts. We are marketing the rights of this contract. We're not marketing a house, because otherwise we're playing in the gray area of brokering houses. So we want to get away from being known as the sleazy guys that wholesale houses, because you learn how to wholesale houses through TikTok and YouTube Academy or whatever. We're actually a professional real estate investment business that assign our rights for fees.
Yeah, it's an important distinction, I think, in that, like, you're saying, I want a different identity. Like, I want this identity to be different, and therefore we're going to act different. We're going to do different. People are going to see us differently. And all of a sudden you have a different kind of business, even though you're doing something very similar to other people maybe. But yeah, you don't want to be seen as a sleazy, I'm taking advantage of you kind of person. We don't like, none of us like that part of the industry.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do we separate ourselves out as we do things ethically and better? And therefore that might mean changing what we call ourselves. So
and high disclosure.
Yeah.
And full on transparency. We even recently bought me and my wife, we recently just bought an office, this beautiful Victorian building inside the city of Wilmington, which is like one of like major cities in Delaware, which is not that major, whatever. But we got a nice spot that's pretty central inside of Delaware, where if we want to do the real estate business for 40, 50 years plus, this is where we want to be.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And with the assignment of contracts, are you being, because you just said full transparency, are you telling people when you're walking into their house, like, hey, we are gonna put this house under contract and then assign our rights to it, or are you just doing that after the fact?
We tell them that we buy houses in bulk and we have investment partners that go in on the deals with us.
Mhm.
And we make money on these deals. It says inside the contract that we, as the buyers, are buying this house to make a profit.
Mhm.
And we will walk people through this house with your consent and with your knowing, and they will go in on the deal with us. And we are going to make a profit on this house, whether we're going to flip the house and sell it later, or we're going to flip the house the same day that we close and we make our profit then. None of that matters to the seller for the most part.
Love it.
That's cool. All right. So you said you're going through the kind of organization. You have a COO / marketing director. Is that you or that's somebody else?
No, that's my guy, Josh.
Okay.
He came from working Walmart distribution center about 3 years ago, became a real estate agent, killed it for 6 months. And he realized he doesn't love the emotional aspect of being a real estate agent. Was floating around a little bit. I picked him up. We did a little bit of media stuff together. We actually started a podcast called the Not a Genius podcast.
That's awesome.
Shameless plug.
Are you still running that?
We haven't done an episode since January because we've been so focused on the investment business and the marketing business.
But there's a bunch of episodes people can listen to.
There's like 30 plus episodes.
Go check it out. Not a Genius podcast.
Yeah, we invested so much heart and soul and sweat into that thing. But there's him, and then there is a lead manager. She's based out of the Philippines. Then I have a guy who goes on the appointments. His name is Kenny. That's my business partner. And then there's me who sells the deals. So I actually don't go to any of the appointments. And I'm super blessed and grateful for, because I'm the ultimate procrastinator. And he is the ultimate hustler. He's probably the best guy in the entire state of Delaware in terms of signing contracts, running the sales process. At least, I mean, we have a lot of improvement to make in terms of how we sell, but just the sheer volume of going to appointments and determination, like we're muscling our way up to the top. You know?
That's cool.
So you're doing dispo?
I'm doing disposition. I raise capital because we take down some of the deals, you know, close on them, take title to them, or you know, like I said, we do a version of novation. We actually do a value add. We do renovation to it, and generally, it's the max that we'll do is kitchen or bathroom remodel. We won't do any gutting of the walls or new systems if we don't own the title for the most part.
So can we camp on that for a second?
Please. Sure.
I would love to ask selfishly, because in our company, we buy a lot of houses. And so I want to hear that process from you. And I think it'd be valuable to other people, but this is
like the novation thing or just
so the novation, first of all, can you explain what a novation is?
Yeah. So novation is the next product after the cash offer, because most people's cash offer is like 40, 50% of, you know, what the market value of the house is when it's fixed up. And most people can't really take that offer because they walk away with absolutely nothing. So something else came along where, okay, say this house is actually livable. It could be bought by an FHA buyer. Maybe it needs about $2,000 to $5,000 worth of work before it can be bought with an FHA loan, which has some strict appraisal stipulations. So that's what the extra money is meant to do. Like, we as investors will put that money into the house so that the loan can close. But we would do a very minimal investment or repair into the house so that it can be bought by an FHA buyer. And the contract, it's structured as us as the buyers, sellers as the sellers, in which it says that we can assign or novate the contract. Novating just means make new. So before we sign a new agreement of sale with the end buyer, which we found through the multiple listing service. So to be fully transparent in the novation process, this wholesale house or whatever, like this contracted house does go to the multiple listing service with us signing as the limited power of attorney, because the seller gives us those rights. This is fully transparent within the sales process. And when we find and identify an end buyer, we will sign with the seller a novation agreement. It's like saying, hey, we're going to promise you this price still as is condition, close on this date. The contract is now going to this buyer at the end. So instead of getting paid on the buyer side, which is most assignment deals. That's how the buyer pays us the fee. On the novation deals, the seller pays us the fee.
Yeah.
So the seller, for the most part now, they know exactly how many dollars we are making, but that's why we have to be very honest and transparent so they don't get upset and then they're just not signing a settlement. Because at the end of the day, we want the seller to sign the settlement statement as well as the deed over to the new buyer.
Yeah.
So walk me through a real simple example, like real nice round numbers. Like what does that look like? Somebody will sell their house for $100,000, let's say. I don't know. Like, walk me through some scenario so I can understand that fully.
Sure. So there was a deal where we had the house contracted for $180,000.
Okay.
This is a real deal. We had the house contracted for $180,000. We would have bought the house cash for $150,000 because the neighborhood's worth $280,000 when it's fixed up. So we promised now the seller, she would not take $150,000, but she would take $190,000 with subject to some terms, which are the novation terms. And she gives us the limited power of attorney to go list the property. We go list on the MLS, and then we conduct showings for about 2-3 weeks, and then a new buyer comes in, they offer us $225,000. We have committed to the seller $190,000, and we're going to pay all of the realtor commissions and closing costs and any repairs associated to get the property sold. So when we go sell it to the person at $225,000, we don't make $35,000.
Yeah.
We make, the $35,000 minus the commissions, minus the closing costs, which generally nets us between, $18,000 and $25,000, just depending on what costs you go. Like if you get like a regular realtor and you're paying 6% commission, 5% commission, we generally do flat fee listing. We pay 2.5% commission. So that's like one of the big things that you can alter. And in Delaware, we have the highest transfer tax. So novation is actually very advantageous for us, especially versus like other places where you can close a house with $1,000 in like basically closing costs. Whereas for us, it's 4% just for the transfer taxes.
Yeah.
So it's 2% and 2% each side. So that could be really, really rich as a buyer when you're telling the seller, I'm going to pay for all the closing costs, including your transfer taxes. So that's why we opt in now for this novation model.
We just closed a novation on Friday. And it was a great one. We made $38,000 on it. But the backstory on it was very similar to this one, where our cash offer was at $265,000. It was a 350 house is what we had the ARV at, but it needed a little bit of work that we could have done, but it was completely livable. FHA would have approved it. They did approve it. And the buyer wanted 310. And so we were completely open and honest with the buyer of, hey, we can't do 310 cash. I know that it still is like seemingly a good deal, but we can't do 310 cash. There's too much risk there. What we can do is we can do a novation on it. We can put it under contract for 310. And the buyer or the seller was very clear with us that they didn't want to go through the hassle of listing it on the market. They didn't want to deal with the inspection notices, finding a realtor or anything like that. And so what we told them is, hey, we're going to put this under contract at 310 and we're going to list it on the MLS at 350. And we will handle everything. We'll pay a cleaner to come into your house and clean it, get it list ready. We have the agent in-house, but the agent will list it. We'll handle showings. Then we'll handle the inspection notice when it comes back and do whatever needs to be done with that. So we listed it at 350. That, it was on a Thursday. We listed it. Friday, we had multiple showings. We got an offer at 360. I think it might have been 365. The inspection notice came back, and the only thing they wanted was a radon, which was like $2,500. And so we handled that and paid our realtor out, and then we made $38,000. The seller made her $210,000 or $310,000, and everybody was happy. And honestly, it's basically for retail ready houses or close to retail ready houses is just cutting out the fact that I'm paying for title work and having to pay interest on my money and go find private money because it stays in the owner's name until it's sold. So it's just a transfer.
It almost feels like a consulting, like, hey, I'm a consultant. This is not what I'd say to a seller, but it's almost like I'm saying I'm a consultant that helps people sell their houses because there's so much that goes into selling a house. It's annoying and you got to have you don't understand what's going on. So we are just a consultant. But the great thing about my consultancy is you don't have to pay anything until after it closes. And so you're going to get your number. I'm going to try to sell it for more than that. And if I can get more than that, then that's my fee as a consultant, but everybody wins. It's kind of what you're saying, dude.
Yes, because a lot of times, at least with the sellers that we're working with, their biggest thing is, I don't want to go through the process of finding a realtor. I don't want to go through the process of having to handle any inspect, because those are stressful. If you don't know what you're doing and somebody comes back and says you need new gutters, you need new windows, you need new radon mitigate. Yeah. And so that's the value that we add. And if we can sell it, for more, we get to keep that profit. One of the things that's helpful for us, and I don't know if you guys do this with your novations, is there's no risk in it for us. The risk is we work for free, because we basically tell them that no matter what, if we can sell this house and you make your money, we're fine with that. So like if we would have only got an offer at 325, we pay our agent, or 1.5 to our agent, 2 to the buyer's agent. So it's a 3.5% commission, and do the inspections, and you still walk with your 310 and we only walk with $100, then we sign a contract, we'll do that. But if it goes below 310, then that's out of your profit. So we would make no money before their 310 starts dwindling down. And those are all decisions they can make. All right, let's move forward with doing these things, or let's not.
Yeah. What's interesting inside our market being Delaware is that we have significantly less buyers than like a big market like St. Louis. So we couldn't actually fly with making larger margins on some of these novation houses, whether like the seller's just very tight with their numbers, and the houses just needed too much work in terms of just us selling on the market as is, because then we'll make like 10, 15 grand as is based off where we are with prices. Nowadays, sellers are a lot more fixated on price than they used to be, versus like, you could run the whole sales process and create a 30 or 20K plus spread. Yeah. So nowadays we actually do a mild renovation model. And then there's this new thing that came out called installment method, which is basically contract for deed. It's a little bit complex, but basically, like, how people would quitclaim their house interest into a trust, right? And then the people who actually own the house are the trustees of the trust, and they can do whatever they want with the house. Yep. We basically do that same model, but now instead of them being the trustees, they're they're actually the owners, but then we are like the managers of the trust. So what that allows us to do now is that we can sign all the listing docs, we can sign all the offers, we can make renovations, we can put on more liens or attach mortgages to the house so that we can get the renovation money. So now, instead of me like fully buying people's houses and originating a new $200,000 purchase price, I will originate $60,000 from a private money lender. So now I'm only paying interest on 60 grand, or like I like to put it at like 40. So I don't like giant remodels, because giant remodels take way too long. Got to pull permits.
What happens though? Let's say you want to, I love this model. I love it. It's almost like you're partnering with them to flip their house.
Exactly.
Is what it feels
100%.
Like, right? Yeah. And I've always thought that was a pretty brilliant model. But the danger, of course, is you go and put 40 grand in a new kitchen and they go, oh yeah, I don't think I want to sell anymore. I think I'm
moved out. And then they already signed all the paperwork with the attorney to make me the manager. Okay. They are still the trustee. They're basically the owners of the trust.
So they can't just change their mind legally.
No,
it's yours.
It's irrevocably given to us.
Okay. So there is a way around. And what I love that this illustrates is that every objection people, whenever they hear about any strategy, human nature is to go, here's all the reasons it won't work. And so there's people out there listening right now going, well, that wouldn't work because I put money into a person's house and they back off. They back out. And now I'm just out that money. It just proves the point that there's always a solution to these problems. All the little nagging, like, here's why it won't work. There's always somebody smart who's figured out how to get around that and how to solve for that problem. And so it's a good encouragement to people to to know there's a solution and to have that adaptability and that mindset that says, I'll figure it out. Don't just discount it because you don't understand it. That's the key. Don't discount something because you don't understand it. And that's.
Yeah. I'm super interested in the model that you're doing. We don't do it because we will only do novations that are turnkey, that we don't have to do any work to. So I'm super interested in the minor reno model, because we buy houses or lose out on houses all the time where it's like, it needs a kitchen and a bathroom, but it doesn't need a full
it's like 2 weeks.
rehab. But because of that, they want basically retail price. We can't pay retail price because we have to come up with the private money. We have holding costs. We have realtor fees. And so I think there is a way there to still monetize all of those leads and like you said, partner with the seller. And so explain that process. You're getting them to put the house in a trust.
Mm-hmm.
And how long does that, like, I guess for me, the explanation process of that and the time would worry me if I'm trying to, at that point, it's like, well, I'm just going to go get a realtor, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you explain that to them? What's the process of that look like? Because it's something that we don't do, and I'm fascinated by it.
So we do the whole same marketing process to go get the leads in, funnel them through, run the sales process, understand their wants and needs. And we find that out generally through, the lead manager call. Then we create an appointment for Kenny. He goes out there, evaluates everything that they actually need, and give them our offerings. And we have different programs. So our cash buy program is just like the regular, we either buy it and close it, or we buy it and assign it or whatever. And then we have the more specialty programs, which is like
Equity protection program. Or
equity protection is like what they call innovation.
Yeah.
But like we just call this installment for the most part, because sometimes to get the person to sign off on like this operating agreement for this trust or whatever, like we're going to give them something out of pocket. So we're going to give them like 10, 15 grand, and then they're going to get the remainder of their money over top of their payoff later. So we actually incentivize them. And this is something that we can do versus like the newbie investor generally, which I would not advise a newbie investor to do something a little bit more complex like this, because it does require a little bit more capital. It requires a little bit more orchestration of the construction management process. And just the way that we present ourselves, like we are very honest with them, telling them we can only take on 5 construction projects at a time right now, because that's literally what our company allows. And right now we're at 4. So we create legit scarcity where it's just like, we can literally only take on 1 more. And we had a problem with this before where it's just like, what is our limit? Because before we thought we could do so many. And it's like, are we just lying to them? And it's like, now it's like, no, we can actually only take on 5 or like 5 active projects. So if something goes onto the market, now we're down to 4. So we're now employing real scarcity, but also telling them the truth. So we're being ethical about it. And then we also have, like I said, the in-person office. So we're having this conversation face-to-face for the most part, building the rapport, building the trust. And we're telling them, at any point that you're dissatisfied with me, you can come here and go find me. You know where my car is. You see my license plate. You know where we are. And it's like, we have nothing to hide. And on top of that, like if you want to meet my construction crew, I'm super blessed and lucky that my dad is my GC. We're partners in a general contracting business.
Oh, that's cool.
And this guy, he was working till like 10 p.m. last night, putting up cabinets, and he's living his dream, which is crazy. I'm like, but like my dream is way different than his dream. But I think we're just all in this together, and he's just super happy to see me win, and he's living his life purpose. And this is just what we're doing in this chapter of our lives. So when we're able to pump these houses out, we could show them our track record. Hey, this is the house on Zillow. This is, these are the same finishes. And it's like, this is our attorney that's like 2 blocks away from our office. Like, if you want to know anything that will verify our legitimacy, like, here you go. We have no problems with it. And then once they feel comfortable with it, they'll sign anything. As long as you're doing exactly what you say that you're going to do. So if you're going to give them 15 grand when they sign the docs, you better show up with the cashier's check, certified funds for them to sign. And that's how we irrevocably get control of the house after they moved out, because we want to help them figure out their next steps situation as well.
Why not instead do a sub 2 and take control of the property with a sub 2 instead of going the whole fixed, does that make sense? Instead of going the trust thing and the installment.
Because if we took a sub 2, we transferred the title of the property, and now that's 4% of assessed value or 4% or whatever. And then all of a sudden that just knocked 6 to 10 grand off of like the money that could have went to their pockets, or our pockets went now to the government's pockets.
And so with the installment plan, that is different from the equity protection plan in the sense that it is no longer innovation anymore.
No, we can actually sign the deed when we go to sell. We don't have to. We don't have to depend on them to sign the deed, which was the problem with innovation. Because
that's the scary part about innovation is, like you said, with innovation, when you're doing work to it, they
could change their mind.
They can walk, and then it's like now you're in litigation.
Dude, you know what I think? So my mind always goes to like the marketing side and how to scale this up. I'm gonna throw an idea. Pick on this idea if you don't think it's a good. I think it's a great one. I just came up with it just now. But here's the idea. I would buy the domain, like a website domain, something like I wrote flipyourhousewithus.com. So flip your house with it, because every human knows what the word flipping houses is because it's TV shows, right? Everybody. So, and then I'd go radio and TV ads. And those TV, like the radio ad would be, hey, I'm Brandon with flipyourhousewithus.com. And what we do is, if you have a house that needs fixing up, but you don't have the money for it, we'll partner with you. Our contractors, our money, we'll manage it, and we'll just split profits at the end. You can flip your house with us. It's 100%. And like if we don't make a profit, like, whatever, you don't make a profit, we don't make a profit unless you make a profit. Yeah. Like that would be such a powerful sales pitch from all the people out there. I mean, I'm thinking Hawaii. I wouldn't do it here, but imagine Hawaii.
We've walked down this path many a times.
I love it because like it's a win-win. Like, hey, like imagine the guy in Hawaii, right? That owns a property that they either inherited or they bought it for $800K. It's now worth $1.5 million. They've got equity, but the thing's a piece of junk because a lot of houses, they haven't been able to afford to fix it up. So for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, it's been slowly decaying. It needs 50 grand to work. That person who owns this house, there's no chance they can come up with 50 grand to fix it. So they're gonna either sell it at $900K and make no money because they gotta sell it to a flipper, or flipyourhousewithus.com. Like, I think it's a cool model.
No, I think it's a great model. And so what it would look like, at least when I've thought this out, is, so let's use a house in St. Louis, just because so it's worth 500 fixed up. It needs 100 grand of work. What's 50, 500 times point? The average buyer is probably gonna be around 275 for that house. Where you can say, hey, you don't have to sell it and only make 275. What we can do is we'll come in and we'll put in 100 grand. We'll fix it up. We'll sell it for 500. And then what would happen is realtor fees would get taken out first, and then our profit, or not our profit, but our cost for the rehab will get taken out. And really, you could probably work in some sort of, like, open up your own construction company and work in like some sort of GC fee on that. Like that. And then from there, so now you're down to, let's say, 375. Then from that 375, or you split you'd have to have a starting base point.
Well, that's the beauty. So like, you can choose the starting base point.
So like 300 would be the starting base point, where it's like, hey, what other offers have you gotten on this house that you're 300,000? Well, I'll tell you what, we can do the same exact thing. You're going to make more than $300,000. You just have to
profit.
You just have to hold the note. And so really, you're protected. Like for me, I would be protected because I'm getting the first, profits out of that to pay just all of my rehab costs. And then they're protected because they're getting 50% of the profit. And there's also going to be more profit because there's no fees to private money, which it can get outrageous at 2%.
Text Cat. Hey, can you buy the domain name flipyourhousewithus.com? ?
Oh, that's crazy. But the problem with this model is now you have to scale construction, and then you have to scale fundraising in terms of that. And
because you can't put a lien on it because there's already a mortgage, probably.
No, you probably can. I mean, because you're not going to hold it on forever. Like we have seconds.
Yeah, you can put a second. You just got to raise the money on the rehab costs.
And you wouldn't have to, you would have to scale construction, but we're doing 15 houses right now. And the fundraising side, you would have to be able to, or the money side, you'd have to be able to fund the rehab, but you don't have to fund the purchase price.
Significantly less.
So right now with those 15 projects, we probably have $4 million out on the street. If we just had all of those with Flip Your House with Us, it would be, 1 and 1 and a quarter.
At the end of the day, it depends on what you want. Because I don't really want to have 30 rehabs on the street.
That's true. Yeah, but even if you did 5, if you had 5 at a time.
Oh yeah, I'm
because
doing
then
that.
Then you're handpicking the best ones. You could also work into the contract real easily. We're gonna figure this all right now, but like you work out a burr price, like where you could say, I can also buy you out of this deal, and I can refine, I can sell it to myself for this price. You can work in a wholesale number where it's like, hey, if we can find somebody else, if we can't do the rehab, like you can work all that into the contract where they still make a profit, just there's different layers built into it.
I think it's brilliant because there's just another tool in your tool belt.
One more tool.
You'd have to figure out all of the contracts and everything like that, and the way to pitch it. But it's another tool in your tool belt where there's been so many times where I've lost a deal over, I mean, $5,000, where it still is a great deal. It just was a little too tight for me, so I couldn't buy it. But if there was no risk involved on it, where there was no risk and they were holding the note to where I didn't have to go raise money, then I would do it, or it's like, hey, this keeps our crews paid. This keeps our crews busy.
Yeah.
They're going to, and there's the potential to make, $20,000, $30,000. I would do it. Now, first option would always be buying it in cash. But it's another tool in your tool belt.
It's a good tool in the tool belt.
Work.
Yeah. And I love that you brought the trust thing as a piece that I can, because I've thought about this for years, maybe not in this depth, but I've thought about this for years. And it's the trust piece that always got me, because I didn't realize that. I was always like, but if you put $100,000 into a remodel or $200,000 in a remodel and they back out, that's a huge, massive risk. And so I never pursued it from that reason. But
where did you learn that at? Did you because I haven't heard of anybody doing that. I know a lot of people do novations, but the installment side of things.
It started with some guys at the Collective Genius Mastermind, and they're from South Carolina. They actually outlawed wholesaling in the past year in South Carolina,
which I think most states are going to follow.
They are. They are going to follow.
Yeah, it's getting domino effect soon.
And there's this guy who's attorney and real estate commissioner who also partnered up with some of my friends. One of the guys is Matt Crawford. You can find him on Facebook or on Instagram, and he's brilliant. Just like guys my age running massive businesses in the real estate sector.
Yeah.
And they're just brilliant guys. So they partnered up, and, their attorney friend / real estate commissioner was like, dude, this installment method thing is totally legit. And they do it a way where they give the seller like $5,000, $10,000, go onto the title with the seller alongside. And then the seller actually gives them power of attorney to their signing rights. So that's kind of how it looks over there. Mine looks a little bit different, because if I were to add myself to the deed, now I'm paying transfer taxes. Whereas if I move the deed over to this entity that these people still own, I don't pay any transfer tax. So I had to do it a different way in Delaware, just according to my attorney. So it just looks different. But most people are doing what they're doing in South Carolina around the nation, because the closing costs, the adding yourself to title costs are significantly lower in every other state outside of Delaware.
So with that though, then what, I guess when you're negotiating with the seller, what protection do they have that you're not going to sell their house for way under market value? Or, what protections do they have in place where it's like, basically just gave this guy, power of attorney for $5,000 on my house? How would you explain that to them?
So we have an operating agreement that they sign, which basically outlines all of the additional terms and stipulations inside of our agreement of sale. So when they are reviewing the operating agreement with the attorney, everything that we had talked about is in there. So when we go to sell the property and the title company's asking for the operating agreement of this trust or this entity, they see it in there. And it's like, I need to pay the owners out this amount, on top of their payoff. Or say it's 180. That's what they sold the house for, and their payoff is 104, 76. They already received 15,000. It's all stated inside of the documents. So it's actually 180 minus 15 minus the payoff. Now that's proceeds wired to them at the second settlement, basically.
Do you have to get an attorney to rewrite docs every time, or?
We have a template, and
it's really
pretty
simple. It sounds confusing.
It's actually very simple.
It is.
So it's like, I'm like one of those guys that I go into rabbit holes and I figure a lot of things out, and I hate to say it's not that difficult to be an attorney as much as I just don't have my license to be an attorney. But it's like, if you're really good at reading the words and being very, clear of the understanding of the verbiage, you can change things around. And then I bring everything over to the attorney that reviews it. And he's like, that's good. I would change this and that. So I still get the advisory from my attorneys for legal processes, but to cut down on my legal expenses, sometimes I play attorney, which
that's awesome.
I get everything reviewed by the attorney for final. But so they may change the entire thing, but I just tell them, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. Can you just make it fit in the realm that, hey, this is binding for them. This holds us secure. And at the end of the day, everyone's protected. And you as the attorney who's signing off on all of this, as this is your work, I want you to also, have the final say that this is what the seller is going to be signing.
Yeah.
So even though I make my own documents, everything's reviewed. So, I mean, I've just been like a whole student in this entire process, and I love coming up with it. And Like even my attorney would say, Jesse doesn't do it perfectly. He's not that good, honestly. I'm honestly not that good, but I will start the process for people. I'll help them out so long as it's the simple part. And if it's more intricate that I need the help, I'm going to outsource it. And that's just part of the small business operator mind. I'm not, running like a social media like you, Brandon, where it's like you actually have operators in your business. I'm the operator in my business, so it's different.
Well, on that note, a couple quick questions. How many deals are you doing a year at this point? Or like what's kind of been your
Last year we
growth?
did 23 and up to date, we're like between 35 and 38.
Wow.
And
That's
like this year already.
Congratulations.
By the way, we're recording this. I know it's probably way
June
before.
11th?
Yeah, June 11th, 2024.
Yeah.
So
It's freaking
I know
awesome,
it probably
dude.
comes out at the end of the year, but dude, yeah, you're crushing
Appreciate it.
All
Yeah.
right, so on that note, what have you learned from going that very first deal to where you are today? Like what lessons have you learned on building a company? Because what I love, the reason I ask is because I love your answer earlier when I said, what's your business like today? You said, I'm a business operator that operates a real estate investment company. You didn't say I'm a real estate investor. You're like, I'm a business operator, I think is the word you used.
Yeah, I study business.
Yeah. So what have you learned in that process of becoming a business owner versus a just fly-by-night real estate investor?
When you're a fly-by-night real estate investor, you don't really keep track of money in and money out, and sometimes you commingle your funds.
Yeah.
And I am 100% guilty of doing that because I was trying to run a real estate marketing business, try to get the leads, go on the seller appointments, while flipping houses with hard money funds and private money funds, as well as first, second position liens, because I'll get gap financing from like private individuals so I can get the down payments for these flips. And then I would take some of the rehab money and go market. And then sometimes I need to go pay my contractors. I'm going to take my operating money to go pay my contractors. And that's just a busted, janked system.
Oh, is that wrong? Because I still do all that.
We're all learning. So I have learned that finance plays such a major role
So
when it comes to business. And if you're a business owner and you have kids that you would like them to get into business or understand how the world works when it comes to transactions like these, it makes so much sense for them to understand how many dollars came out or how many dollars came in via income. How many expenses do you have? What are you going to charitably give away if you do any of that? And then what do you have left over for yourself as profit? And do you play the game of whatever is left over? You're going to take as profit, or you're going to take your profit off the table and just spend less in order for you to have that profit. Because some people will play the game that they want the cash today and they want to live their life like that today. And that's fine. It's just all about balancing your risk. So in the lessons that I've learned in the last couple of years, because 2022 was literally everything just falling off, all the wheels just coming right off, because I thought I was a genius because I was flipping houses and making 30 grand and I would be over budget, over timeline. 13 months one time, over time.
Wow.
Since the time we closed to the time we sold, 13 months, and we still profited $30,000. That was the market saving me.
Yeah, for sure. Those are good times, man.
Yeah, but then a couple months after that, I exited a couple other flips, lost 30 here, lost 20 there, lost 5 here. And it was just not as glamorous. And they were full gut renovations. So I also learned that I'm just not a construction guy. I'm just not a full gut renovation construction guy, And how long does it take to execute some of those projects? Because my dad could be in and out of some of these kitchen, bathroom, floor paint remodels within 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Max 6 weeks. And that's where we want him. He could juggle 3 projects and execute all of them in under 6 weeks, because he can juggle his guys and his subcontractors. And then once they're going to the market, we can add another to the pool. So we just knew what our game was. We knew who we needed on our team.
Mm-hmm.
We knew that we needed to be diligent when it came to budgeting and forecasting and keeping track of our money, keeping track of the cash that's in the accounts, as well as, we utilize some strategies from Profit First and has several bank accounts. You could have a dozen bank accounts just for specific houses, for operational expenses, for tax. You should be saving for your taxes, which fly-by-night real estate investor, most of them do not. They will go live it rich and it's tax write-off.
Yeah.
But they don't know the laws because, you're buying, meals or expenses for yourself. And it's like, they change the laws all the time. And it's like, you can only write off, certain types of meals or certain type of entertainment or
certain
whatever.
percentage of it. Yeah.
Certain percentage of it.
Yeah.
And they think, oh, I could take full depreciation, bonus depreciation. 100% is gone. That's the thing of the past, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like now 80% or 60%, it just goes down year by year until they revise the new tax laws. So being in business, you have to keep up with the things that are happening, you know, in the news. You have to keep up with discipline in terms of how you are operating. You also cannot get too comfortable, because at any time, any place and time, the economy could change, outside variables can change, and all of a sudden your business gets hit. That flipping business model completely gets wiped out.
Yeah.
That's what happened with Burr over the last couple of years, when I was buying properties sub 5% interest rate on investment grade property. Now I'm getting 8 to 10. Last year, I signed a 10.25% note for 30 years with prepayment penalty, and I sold that house this year because it was a loser property.
Yeah. Wow.
I had to pay about $7,000, $8,000 in prepayment penalties, and I didn't even realize I signed a 10.25% note.
That's insane. It was rough times. I mean, it is rough times, man. But I love that you make that point about the finance. I was doing a coaching call, kind of a consulting thing yesterday with a dude that I know, and we're going. He's not in real estate, but he's got another business. He's an entrepreneur, and we're talking about his numbers, and I'm like, it's just not adding up. And I was like, well, what is this doing, or what is this doing? He's like, well, we kind of mix our personal account and our business account together as one, because the one account got shut down, and so we only have one account now. We just share everything out of that. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, can we get like a list of all your expense? Like, we really need to understand expenses. And I was like, well, I don't have access to that account because my business partner has that one, and I don't get access to it. So I only know some of the money gets transferred in. I'm like, all right, we need to just clear. Like, I was like,
just close everything down.
Yeah, this is
shut everything down.
You cannot. I very clearly said, you cannot be an entrepreneur if you can't get the basics right of financials. Like, it doesn't matter, because like that is the core. Like, if you don't, because it doesn't matter if you make $10 million a month. If you don't know how to manage your money, you'll spend $12 million a month. It's like the amount of money you make is completely irrelevant if you don't know how to manage your money. And it just blew I was getting so frustrated on this call, because I'm like, what do you mean you don't have access to your own financials? Like, you have to know what you're making. Well, I mean, you tell me a gross number. I'm like, well, that's great. Yeah, great. That's gross. I need to know net. And he's like, well, I just don't have that number. I'm like, you're the owner. What are you doing? Yeah. Oh, it drove me nuts.
If I were to, we're probably going to talk about it later in terms of like giving advice to your past self.
Yeah.
It's pertaining to finance.
Yeah.
Because my biggest headache every single year.
Me too.
Because taxes are just complicated for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And bookkeeping is just like, it's an ongoing battle. And sometimes you're the only one that knows what that expense is. And somebody's asking you what it is. And sometimes that was 2 months ago. And it's like, I have no idea.
I think there are so many investors, real estate investors out there right now that are broke and they don't know it, because they're just kicking 100%. The can down the road, borrowing more money for this property. They have no real tracking of their finances of, this is exactly what I spent on private money, on insurance, taxes. Because we even went back through our books, which fortunately we were just super insulated or protected in the market in 2020 and 2021 because it was going up, where we were making a lot of money when we probably shouldn't have been, but it also gave us the time to learn how to run a business and manage our books. But we were going back through some numbers at one point, and we were like, we thought that we made like $48,000 on this house. But when you really go look at our books and add in all of the expenses, we really only made $26,000 on this house. And so I think there's so many people that are just kicking the can down the road by doing more and more and more. There was a guy that I talked to who was on the surface, he was crushing it. He was doing about 25 homes a month, and he ended up going out of business. He said, I was buying and selling 25 homes a month, but he's like, I was spending the money like I was buying and selling 26 houses a month, you know? And so
people do. And they also, what people will do is they'll, like, if you think about your income as an entrepreneur, like 1 month you might be, let's call it 20K, and then 12K, then 25, and then 11, and then 28, and then 15, right? It goes up and down, different months, different amounts of money you make. People take the max that they can remember, and then they live off that. Like, that's the amount that they now are, oh yeah, I make 25 grand a month. And you're like, well, do you? Well, yeah. Look right here. January, I made 25 grand. First of all, it's probably wrong, because like you said, it's like, there's all these other expenses you're not accounting for. But even if you were right, you base your expenses, your living expenses off of the max, and you hire employees for the max. it's going to kill you every single month because you never will hit that max.
Yeah.
Or hardly ever.
I think too, as an entrepreneur, one thing that I've learned is like looking at money that we're making in 6-month increments or even year increments, where it's like we had an incredible May. It was probably our best month ever. But June we'll do 30 for 40K, you know,
Averages out.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so like, you can't look at our May and say, oh, this is what we make. You can't look at our June and say, this is what we make. And so like looking at our business in 6-month increments or quarterly increments and saying, this is how much we make or do, or what we should be shooting for. So,
Yeah. The 100% when you're starting the business or you're starting any type of venture, you got to look at the story, tortoise and the hare.
Yeah.
When you go back and you look at how the hare just sprints all the way to the finish line and he doesn't cross, and that's like the 1% that he needs to win the race. But then the hare, ran all the way to the finish line, and then the tortoise slugs their way and then beats the hare because he actually finishes. You got to look at yourself and take on the mindset and the personality of the guy who's moving slow, checking all of his boxes off, making sure that he is consulting all the right people. Because if I had just talked to some people who are farther along in the journey than me, I probably would have known and probably would have found out a lot sooner before I screwed up all my books, and then, just lose a couple years of my life or whatever. And then you just be able to see these things if you are able to look at the forest rather than just be in the trees so much. And I think that's one of the biggest struggles with being a real estate investor. Is like, you live over optimistically. Say you made $40,000 on a house flip, but if you look at your real P&L and some expenses that you may have missed off because of, the inspection repairs, and you're, say $4,000 evaporated in the inspection process, that's 10%. So instead of 40, you actually made 36, and if you do that on a bigger scale, you made 100, you lost 10, or like $1 million, you lost 100. And it's like, now you're like terrible. Like now it's starting to actually, these are bad habits that scale as you are scaling your business and you're scaling your life, and they can come back and eat you. And that's why it's so important that when you're building like a small business or something like this, try to base your business off of your most conservative month or your average of like a quarter or 2 quarters.
Yep.
If it's too little money, looking at your lowest month, because that's like not the reflection of where your business actually is. Look at the averages of like 6 months and then base your budget and forecast off of that. Like even today during our level 10 meeting, we saw that the gas expense went from 600 to 1,000. And it's like, I know we're getting like more appointments, but like not double.
Yeah.
And it's like, what happened here? So it's like, we were just evaluating, and then we're putting guardrails, in our processes so that, hey, we're checking everything. And I think, fly by night real estate investor or, pseudo business owner, they would not think of these things because they're just moving so fast and their numbers are inaccurate inside of, their QuickBooks or whatever.
Yeah. Agreed. All right, man, we are moving toward the end, but before we get there, I do want to ask this question about one thing on the show is we give 100% of the profits from the kind of the show toward a charity of the guests' choosing. So for this episode, what breaks your heart? What are we sending the money to?
I think Ryan Pineda has said this in the past, Homes for Hope. Like I had gone on the YWAM mission trip down there last year. I forgot, Ensenada. It's Ensenada, Mexico. It's actually this weekend, but wife's pregnant. So priority is the family right now. And hopefully in the future, I'll have the opportunity to take my entire family down there. And I know that sometimes people question, like, man, you look at these mission trips and you see how much money you pour into it just to bring the Americans down to like a place like Mexico. And it's like, what if you just hired a bunch of Mexican contractors to build the house for the people? But I don't think that's the right way to look at it. I think one of the things that you could see inside of that process is like, sometimes there's people who would never, ever give money to this type of organization unless they experienced it for themselves and they witnessed what broke their heart, and then maybe they became full-time missionaries. So this is kind of like the case between short-term mission trip versus long-term mission trip. And I think there's a place in the world for short-term missions like this because it only lasts about 3-4 days, where we're building like a 400 square foot house with some electricity, no plumbing for people who basically have slept on the ground their entire life. Like people are getting sick because they are just breathing in dust and they can't work. And like they tell stories like this all the time. And that's a very regular, common occurrence, in place like Mexico or third world countries. And Homes for Hope, they build thousands of houses per year, not just in Mexico, but internationally as well. So that's one of the things that really break my heart and that I feel strongly towards and will love more people to be part of.
Awesome.
All right. Well, we will send the money that way. So let's roll the ad. All right. So I look down at my phone and I see this text. You need to call me. Your house is on fire. And I sat there and I'm looking at the screen and I'm wondering, is this some kind of a joke? The guy who sent it was a tenant I had been trying to evict for months and he hadn't paid in forever. He had trashed the house. I mean, it was disgusting. And the guy himself was, pretty darn unstable. Now, of course, I call him after that text and it goes to voicemail. Great. Now, a few minutes later, I get a call from the fire department. Yep, my first ever rental house was burning down. So how did I get myself in that situation? Well, I didn't screen that tenant. I put in someone I thought would be good, and he was until he wasn't. Now, this is over a decade ago, and since then, I've learned how to properly vet a tenant. And that's through Turbo Tenant, which makes screening for both background and credit really, really easy. But it gets even better. Turbo Tenant also helps you market your rentals to like dozens of the largest sites, including apartments.com and Redfin. You can create custom leases that cover all your rental laws. And you can even use Turbo Tenant for your automatic rent payments. All of this for less than the cost of your Netflix subscription. Yeah, I know, crazy. Save time, save money, and save your sanity by using Turbo Tenant. And because you're so darn cute, you can use the code Brandon10 to save 10%. So check it out at turbotenant.com/betterlife. Hey, so many of you have heard me tell that story about how I bought my daughter Rosie a fourplex, like a rental property, the week she was born, and how we put it on an 18-year, mortgage payoff plan so it'll be paid off when she graduates from high school. So essentially, my tenants are paying for Rosie's entire college. Now that's pretty awesome, right? Not to mention, it's also making almost like $1,000 a month in cash flow. That's double awesome. But I don't think I've ever shared really exactly how I found that deal. So here goes. I found it through direct mail marketing. And here's how. I simply built a high-quality lead list of a lot of names and addresses of potential sellers, and I sent out a whole bunch of mail to every person on that list. And then I talked on the phone to a ton of people, and then I finally got one person that was interested enough to sell me the property, and I got a deal at a great price. So building that giant lead engine like that, I mean, it works, but it takes a ton of time, knowledge, and effort, which can really slow down an investor's growth, which is why I reached out to my friend Ryan with Ballpoint Marketing. I asked him to sponsor this show because they're the best at doing everything that I just talked about. Like, they're literally going to help you build your entire lead engine. You're gonna get a one-on-one call where they're gonna help you figure out what you want and then build your lead list for you. Their robots are going to handwrite the postcards with a real pen, which is super cool. They're gonna send them out and they'll even answer the phone calls for you. Plus, they'll help you track it all inside of a CRM that they create for you. I know, it's crazy, crazy awesome. And it's going to help you land way more deals consistently. And because you're awesome and because you listen to this show, you're going to get a discount when you tell them that I sent you, or just use code Brandon when checking out with them. I love Ballpoint Marketing and officially recommend them to all my friends and masterminds. So if you're ready to kick your deal flow up a notch, getting more quality leads without pulling your hair out, just go to ballpointmarketing.com/betterlife. Or just shoot me a DM on Instagram with the word ballpoint, like one word, ballpoint, and I'll hook you up with them directly. All right, we're back. Jesse, I want to move in toward the next little segment of our show, get to know you a little bit better. This is called the 3-2-1 pivot. So the idea of a pivot, your own life's going one direction, something gets you just knocked off track a little bit in a good way. So what are 3 books, pivot books, or books that have changed the direction of your life?
So number 1 for me is The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer.
Yeah, I love that book.
I read that book twice a year because my life automatically goes into a spiral, goes super fast. And sometimes I just need to go back, just sit in the longest line in the shopping, at the grocery store or wherever, or sit in traffic and just enjoy the time that I have, whether in solitude, prayer, listening to some worship music. And I think a lot more people should appreciate,
I love that.
a slow content, and peaceful life, honestly.
Very cool. All right.
And another book would be Reforming Marriage by Douglas Wilson.
Ooh, I've not read that.
I have not either.
Yeah, this was recommended by one of my buddies, Wilson, who is he's a great husband, and he's a father of 2. He just recently gave birth to his second daughter, so that's awesome. This past week, it's so awesome. Yeah, he was my mentor or discipler when we were in college. So Reforming Marriage was crucial inside my marriage in like the last year, because the first marriage, unfortunately, I didn't work on myself and see how much, I was abdicating my personal responsibility as a husband or putting my wife first. And I was just doing so many things selfishly and not putting her or my family before.
Did you say first marriage or first year of marriage?
My first year.
Okay.
Did I say first year of marriage?
I don't know, but
Okay.
I know that you have not had multiple marriages.
My first year of marriage.
Yeah.
Oh, I was like, dang, you're 25. And
No.
Yeah,
This is my.
Yeah,
this
that's what I wanted to clarify
okay.
because I was
Thank
pretty
you.
sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, this is my first year of marriage, and I failed.
Oh, yeah.
Utterly failed so badly.
Didn't we all fail
And
in our first year of marriage?
There's probably more days that I made her cry than smile.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But
That book helped.
yeah, in the last 6 to 9 months, this book was something that we read together. This was something which, didn't go perfectly in terms of reading structure, but it built a discipline. And it's also, we learned some skills in terms of how to communicate, and then also aligning vision of how we want to raise up our children, how, like building values within our family, aligning mission. As we align mission inside our business, we should align mission inside of our household.
Yeah, that's cool.
And Reforming Marriage, small but dense read, 120 pages. I loved it.
Cool.
Awesome. I'll have to read.
And then
All right,
last
book 3.
book, it is the book that I'm currently trying to execute right now, is Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell.
Ah, great book. Right there on the show, on our wall of authors who have been on the podcast.
That's awesome.
Yeah, very cool. Why do you love Buy Back Your Time? Why is that important?
I think at the beginning of this year, I was wearing 70 to 80% of the hats in my business.
Yeah.
And I would work from the time I woke up to about 8 to 9 p.m. at night. And like, I would always feel the need to respond to an email or schedule this appointment on my calendar. Not like the way you just like schedule something with Kat, or you just tell her, send her a text and she'll take care of it. Like, honestly, I'm trying to get to that point. And my team honestly started realizing like we need to buy back more of my time so that I could do more pivotal activities within our business in order to move it forward to elevate it to a higher level, as well as pour into the people in my organization. Because if I'm doing the busy activities that are more administrative, I'm not doing the leadership activities. I'm abdicating being a great leader, like caring for my people, seeing what's going on inside their lives, as well as trying to meet them where they are so that they feel fulfilled. Because if I'm not doing a great job as a leader, then it just trickles down and they're not going to be great leaders, and they may find another place where they can grow more. So that's currently, me trying to buy back my time, and, currently in the process of creating playbooks. And I've just always been the type of guy that whenever I let something go, I don't fully let it go. And then I pick it back up and I get in other people's way that I hired to do that task. I just need to learn to fully let go and trust them. And if balls drop, that's a learning lesson. So I'm trying to learn.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's cool, man.
Love that.
I'm hanging out with Dan. He's coming out to the 50 event in Seattle. He's going to be with us. And
Yeah.
Oh, that's
It'll
awesome.
be a good time.
Can't wait to be there.
We're going to get you in. All right. You're not good enough yet, but someday,
I'm
Cam.
not yet.
Someday.
Someday. That's my goal.
All right.
2 pivot people. Who are 2 people that have changed the direction of your life?
Yeah. So 2 pivot people. One will be my business partner, Kenny Seward. He's 49 years old and I am 25 years old. And it's extremely humbling to have somebody like him in my corner that believes in me, trusts in me. He has 9 kids.
9 kids.
He has 9 kids, and he has such an inspiring story. You guys can find it on my podcast if you want to hear his story. He could tell it better than me. But essentially, he has kids that are older than me that, we're just different, and we connect and relate so much. But at the same time, we lift each other up. So
Yeah.
this is like one of those relationships where I build him up and he builds me up. And even when somebody is like, you know, a couple years younger than my parents, he's not set in his ways. He's done so much growing and changing, transforming, that I'm like, oh my gosh, like what people say on the podcast and like how you can have different like identities throughout your life. Like maybe in like 10 years, I'd be doing something totally different. And another 10 years on top of that, I'd be doing something totally different. He came from, doing construction on the highway to now being a real estate investor and being the best dad ever to 4 kids under 10, you know? So he's just crushing it in that. And he inspires me to be a great father to my kids in the future.
Cool.
And then secondly, like this may be cheesy, but Brandon,
Oh man,
Brandon,
thanks.
you're that other guy for me
I
because
don't think anyone ever said me. That
I think I did.
did you?
really,
I don't know. I'm just
I
trying
don't
to
know if you did.
steal some.
yeah, because honestly, out of all the people's voices that I've ever listened to in my life, like, I've cut 100+ lawns in my lifetime, and the amount of hours I listen to you or Josh or David Green, like I've learned endless lessons. And, my curiosity for the world stems from your curiosity of the world and how you ask questions to people to just dig deeper and understand, who they are as human beings. Like I had just kind of learned all of that from listening to you.
Well, thanks,
And
man.
another thing I wrote was that you inspire me to be down to earth, abundant, serving others, and, ask better questions to get better answers and have better conversations. Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Awesome.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, my pleasure, man.
All right. Pivot quote. A quote that has changed the direction of your life.
Yeah, so Proverbs 3:5-6, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to him and he will make your path straight. I feel like my life has been a testimony of living life faithfully, trusting in God. I'm not perfect, and I will sometimes go streaks of not reading my Bible, not praying. Sometimes I would, just not be like a good Christian as people like expect me to be. But at the end of the day, I know the direction, the compass in which my heart is guided on, and the principles, the morals, and the teachings of Jesus that ultimately lead me and guide me to do the things that I do in my life. And people see the authenticity in those things, that they know that I tell the truth. Like I am walking a path that is more so to lift other people up and encourage them rather than build millions and millions of dollars and big empire and big legacy for the sake of bringing me glory. But really, no, I'm just a sinner. And at the end of the day, I just want to point all the glory and give all the thanks to God, because I wouldn't be where I am without him. And he's ultimately showed me who I could be by being in him. And I want to do the same for other people.
Yeah, man.
Awesome.
Beautiful. Beautifully said.
Love that. All right, we're going to go over to the next segment where we're going to look at your past, your present, and your future. And so first question I have for you, which you are 25, so this isn't looking back a ton.
Yeah.
But what advice would you give to 18, 19-year-old you?
So know how much money is coming in and going out.
Yeah.
Keep your books clean, because it's significantly easier to maintain your financials and add to it rather than clean up everything from scratch.
Yeah.
You went through some trauma.
You know how many fines, fees,
Yeah.
distress you can go through by messing with the IRS?
Yeah.
It is ridiculous. So don't get yourself in that. Start early.
Oh, did you have an IRS?
No, I don't have any.
Oh,
I don't have any incidents.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Because you figured it out. But I know you went through some, mess with the finances. And I like that is going to change people's lives listening to the show. They're like, oh yeah, I better get that figured out.
Oh yeah. And go to Financial Peace University as soon as you possibly can. It's, a Dave Ramsey, Ramsey Solution product. And I facilitate one at my local church. Just find one in your local area. You don't need to be Christian to go to one of these things. But even me, as somebody who takes on millions of dollars of debt and going to one of these, maybe you feel like an outsider or outcast. But honestly, everybody's messed up, broken. Everybody has their own issues. It just looks different. But what you could learn from over there can apply to 90% of your life. And maybe that last 10% is just what makes you different. But if you do all the things that are inside that curriculum and hold yourself accountable within that type of community, you could take it multiple times a year and guarantee you will be better with money. You'll be a better steward.
I think everybody, if they went through financial peace, even though like for you and I and Brandon, we use debt.
I don't use debt at all. Nope, no debt.
But some of the things where it's
$1
like
billion.
we did that in our early 20s.
Yeah.
And we just kind of stopped it once we started making a little bit more money. But we were going through our credit card statement the other day, and I was sick about how much. Also, when you think about like that money, I could have given that to a charity or something. Like I've been paying $100 a month for a gym for the last year that I didn't know about. I know you told me you've been paying for
LegalZoom for years and didn't realize it.
Exactly.
I pay $200 a month for a gym, but I use it every day.
You do, yeah. Well, so mine was it was the one that in Missouri.
Oh, no.
And I
forgot to
moved here
cancel
in
it.
August of 20. I used it for so it's been 18 months. So January of 2023 was probably the last time I went there, and so for 18 months I've been paying $100.
That's
Great gym.
You were supporting the small business.
Well, and that's
You're
what
getting
that's
small
what I
business. Good
felt good
justification.
about that. But so important.
All right, man. The better life question. How would you define
Was there a past, present, future?
this? This is all part of it.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm cutting you off.
Yeah. This is the
present right
middle.
now.
This is present.
Okay.
So the question is like right now, I'm going to go this way. I have two different better life questions. I kind of alternate them based on what I think people are going to say. What is something you're doing in your life presently that's giving you a better life? Let's go with that one.
I'm trying to be intentional about being humble and expressing gratitude in every single situation, because when you're in the journey and you have quote unquote made it, these are some of the best days of your life, in which if you don't take the time to celebrate the small wins and enjoy it with the people around you that you're doing it with, when you have quote unquote made it and you're looking back at the past and you wish that you had celebrated a little bit more, or that you gave more praise to the people around you, or that you wanted to help other people along with their journeys when they were just a couple steps behind you, you wish you could have done all those things, but you're so far along now. And it's just like, it looks totally different now. You could still do it, but giving in the moment when you don't have a lot to give, like you're basically, being charitable from the heart, even without a lot, start now in terms of being generous, being humble, being grateful.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Love that. What's the, that reminds me, and it's such a great, profound quote, even though it's from The Office. When Andy Bernard, he says, I wish we could know that we were in the good old days before we actually have left them, or something like that.
That is the quote I'm referencing. No, I'm kidding.
Well, no, but it's true. Like we are living our dream life, and sometimes we aren't in the present. We don't stay in that, So, awesome.
Living my dream right now, being on Brandon's podcast.
Yeah,
Isn't that crazy.
Exactly.
Him and I.
Yes, sir. So, last question for you. What do you want your legacy to be like? What do you want people to say about you 100 years from now?
When it comes to who I want people to remember me as, I want them to not remember me for the things that I accomplished or the things that I have done for society, as much as the heart that I had for my family, the heart that I had for my community, like the people who were my closest friends. Like I think about who would be at my funeral, and like I think about how, like, say you had a first grade teacher and they taught 30 students for like 50 years, and you have 1,500 people showing up at this funeral, and it's like, oh my gosh, it was like a celebrity, or what just happened? And it's like, no, it's like we were all taught and drastically impacted and changed by that person because they poured into us. And I want to be that person, honestly, whether that's an educator or a mentor or discipler or just whatever, like somebody like shepherding a flock. Like I just want to be pouring into other people, and I don't need them necessarily to, speak so highly of me at my funeral, as much as I want them to feel in my heart, like when I am gone, that, wow, he made a big difference in my life. And I'm so grateful for him that I'm going to continue to make a difference in other people's lives as well.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. All right, let's wrap things up. What are you excited for in your life coming up? Besides a baby?
Yeah.
All right. I'm just excited about every single day that I get to be alive, live, work out. I'm just excited for I'm just excited for the rhythm that I get to live and experience in my daily life. Like, I don't do many things. I work out. I go to work and hang out with my best friends all day, and I consider that like my extracurricular activity because it feels like a sport. I'll go cook at home. I'll do my church functions, and I read and pray, and I hang out with my wife. And honestly, that's good enough for me. And once in a while, I get to travel, but I don't need
Come to Hawaii and be on a podcast.
Yeah, I don't need more than 3 to 5 days. Like maybe once or twice a year. Like I don't know. It's just I'm just super excited that I get to live my dream life right here, right now, and it's actually not as glamorous as what I thought it would be when I was 18 years old.
It's deep, man.
Yeah, that's good. It's really good. And then last but not least, where can people find you at? Where can they find your podcast, company, you?
Yeah. So they could find me on Facebook at Jesse Nguyen. They could find me at Instagram at the Jesse Nguyen. They could find the Not a Genius podcast at Not a Genius on Instagram, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on YouTube. And, we're Delaware home buyers, and people want to invest with us or do deals or want to learn about the business of wholesaling or real estate investments or just chat shop. Yeah, they can contact me, and you can send me an email at jesse@upperroomgroup.io if you want to reach out to me that way. And
Cool. How do you spell your last name? Just so people can find it.
Nguyen.
Perfect.
Yeah. That's the Vietnamese Smith.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Love it.
Yes,
All
sir.
right, Jesse, this is amazing. Thank you for coming on. I think people's lives are going to be changed from this podcast. I love your strategies. I love your mind, the way you think about problems, and I love the heart that you come at all this with it. So appreciate you.
Appreciate it, man.
It was a blast.
And that, my people, is the show. Thank you for tuning in. And hey, before you go, if you enjoyed the episode or if you enjoy the show in general, please consider leaving us a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. We really do value your feedback, and we read the comments. We make future decisions about topics and guests and everything else. Plus, it helps us reach more people the more reviews we get. And last but not least, please head over to social media. Consider friending and following and subscribing to all that stuff at Better Life and my personal page at Beardy Brandon on Instagram, YouTube, and everywhere else. Thank you again for listening. I'm honored that you would bring me along on your journey toward building wealth through real estate investing without losing your soul.